Welcome back to On the Light. I'm your host, Susan Johnson. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Lois Steinberg. Lois's journey into yoga began at just 14 years old, sparked by a black and white television screen and a young girl's curiosity about movement. What followed was a lifelong devotion to practice, study, and teaching that would place her heart devoted in the Iyengar tradition. Lois spent extended immersive periods at the Ramamani Iyengar Memorial Yoga Institute in Pune, studying closely with B.K.S. Iyengar, Geetaji, and Prashant Iyengar over decades. Her path was rigorous, demanding, and transformative, shaped by discipline, deep inquiry, and profound personal experience. Known worldwide for her work in yoga, therapeutics, and women's health, Lois has played a pivotal role in transmitting these teachings with clarity, integrity, and compassion. She brings not only extraordinary technical knowledge, but a living memory of the teachings as they were embodied, tested, and refined at their source. In this conversation, Lois shares candid stories from her early years of practice, her time in Pune, and the lessons, sometimes fierce, sometimes tender, that continue to inform her teaching today. This is a rare and deeply human glimpse into the lineage, the learning, and the lived experience of Iyengar Yoga. Please enjoy this episode of On the Light. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm hanging in there. How are you?
I'm doing well. The first thing I want to ask is, how did you come into the Iyengar Yoga method?
I was 14 watching public TV in the morning, and there was Lilius Yoga and You, Lilius Folan, who's still alive today. She was in black and white. She had this long braid to the side. I loved it. And I wanted to become flexible because I was so stiff. And I just started doing it every day since then and never stopped. And I was in college and had a friend who also did yoga, not yet Iyengar yoga, took me to a yoga class that I thought, I don't need that. I already do it on my own, because she was just up on a platform saying, now follow me. Doesn't that feel good? It wasn't anything earth shaking. But then that same friend, gave me the book Light on Yoga. And we were looking at it together, like cracking up. That man doesn't have a spine.
Yeah.
Little did I know he was alive. I just thought he was dead because, I was so young then and he looked so old. Of course he was dead.
Yeah.
And then I used to run at this gym. It was a gymnastics gym, and 15 times around the track was a mile, which is kind of boring. And then I would go down into the pit on this gymnastics mat and do yoga. But then while I was running this one day, I saw a woman on the mat below. While I was running, I was watching her, and she did the most amazing head balance. And I went down to her and I said, wow, how is that head balance so beautiful? And she said, oh, well, I'm from California, as they were all then. And I studied with a man who studied with B.K.S. Iyengar. I mean, like, that guy is alive in the book. She's like, yes. So she started teaching me, and I went on break. I was an undergraduate in college, and there was like a break from school, and I went to San Diego where her teacher was and took lessons from him, and that was it. And this same person, her name is Robin Kyle Nichols, and we started meeting every day at 7 a.m. with another woman who, I lost touch with her, but we put the book in the middle and we'd stand around the book and we'd start doing the standing poses and consult the book and consult the pictures. And then one day she said, you're going to teach our little group Trikonasana, because Robin started, she was teaching, like, we would go to the university back then. The doors were always open. We would find an open classroom in one of the buildings and invite people. And we used to charge nothing, nobody came, and then we charged $1 and people came. And so one day she says, you're going to teach our little group of three, to the two, Trikonasana. And I'm like, no, I'm not, because I didn't have any plan. I
Yeah.
just, was practicing and going to school, getting a degree, having other plans. And I didn't want to do it. I resisted. She insisted. I came the next morning, totally understood that I knew nothing when I had to teach it. And I remember crying. And then she started forcing me to teach, and I would cry before class, after class, how bad I was. And uh, many years later, one of the students, early students, said to me, when you first started teaching, we complained to Robin how bad you were. And
Hmm.
Robin responded saying, "Oh, you just wait." And I did this for 5 years with my little group. And our little group, we drove to Ann Arbor, Michigan, which was a hotbed of Iyengar yoga. And I would go there sometimes on my own and spend weeks at a time there. I still have a student, Tony Reese. Now, she was my teacher then, one of the
Hmm.
main teachers back then, who's 86 now, and she takes my class
Oh, wow.
because of the pandemic. Yeah, it is a wow. And
Hmm.
my first teachers then were Mary Palmer, Mary Dunn's mother, Susie Vidri, and Priscilla Neal.
Hmm.
And then we also had yoga camp where Mary Dunn would come and teach.
Hmm.
And so I just went there a lot, traveled. Back then, it was Jimmy Carter was president, so the speed limit was 55. It took me 7 hours to get to Ann Arbor. So when people complain, there's no yoga teacher near me, like I can't relate to that.
Great.
By hook or by crook, I would go.
Yeah.
And Martin Jackson came from Australia. He's passed now, and he was a force, an unbelievable force of fire, who was an early Iyengar yoga teacher from Australia. And so then 5 years after this, I went to India and stayed a whole year. The
Hmm.
first
Okay.
time, yeah, 1983. After 5 years practice, yeah, I went there and was there for a year. That was my
Okay.
first. I always spent long extended periods in India
Uh-huh.
since that time, and until now, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I just spend. Now I'm at pre-pandemic. I would spend 2 months. Now post-pandemic, I'm spending 1 month a year in Pune, but I'm going twice a year. So I still get 2 months,
Mhm.
but just twice.
Yeah, yeah. So what was that first experience like?
Of going, well, oh, well, you're opening up a can of worms, my dear. And I can't say too much because it would be he was a tyrant. B.K.S. Iyengar was a tyrant, and I suffered um a lot. I can't really I'm not going to say because people will
Yeah,
misinterpret
sure.
what I went through. I used to say it more freely, but in this politically correct age, I'm not going to say anything. But so my very first experience was I got to the Institute and all the Midwest, my teachers were there talking to him, and there he was shaking his head. His hair was down, shoulder length, and he was shaking his head, and I thought, oh, Hanuman. He looked just like
Mhm.
Hanuman.
Huh.
And so that was my very first vision of him, my very first reaction. And then the very first day of class, it was all these great teachers who were like twice my age. I was the second youngest person in the room. The most youngest was only 16 years of age. He came with his parents. Um, and I was the next youngest at 26, and Guruji didn't like that. Because
Mm.
anyway, I he wanted people to stand shortest in the front, tallest in the back, and I didn't really understand that. For me, I just went to the back of the room to hide because
Yeah.
his energy was so intense. I stood in the back and I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, a bolt of lightning hit my arm.
Mm.
And before I knew it, it was him grabbing my arm like a bolt of lightning. That's what it felt like. It was such a shock to the
Mm.
system. His energy was so strong, and he marched me to front row dead center.
Mm.
And you had to stand on that line for 3 weeks, most of the time, for at least the standing poses.
Mhm.
And then we jump our legs apart. He's up on the platform. He's right there, and I'm looking up at him. And I remember what I was thinking. Oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
I can't believe it. he's not a picture in the book anymore. This is so amazing. I can't believe it. He says, you, in
Mm-hmm.
this big, he used to have this big booming voice. You're a beginner. You're
Mm-hmm.
looking up at the ceiling instead of down into your soul. I immediately looked down, and I'll never forget this. 10 years later, when he's teaching me in practice, he keeps hitting my chin up in Virabhadrasana 1 because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
took me 10 years after that initial shock with him hitting my chin back
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
to look up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so intense. I cried for 3 days straight once. And he really picked on me and one other person who never came back. And somebody told me Mary Dunn talked to him about me in the library.
Mm-hmm.
And, he kept saying, you're a beginner. You shouldn't be here. Get out. And Geeta would chime in. Yes, what are you doing here? Get out. And he did some cruel things, but I hung in there. And he kept calling me a beginner, beginner, beginner the whole time. And finally, when it was all over and I was staying for a year in the general classes, he decides after that 3 week intensive, which was supposed to be his last one, he
Oh.
decides, oh, he's going to do another one. He kept thinking, I'm going to retire. I'm going to do another one just for beginners. So I said, can I? And back then you just called him Mr. Angar. Guruji wasn't the term yet. I said, Mr. Angar, can I take your beginner course? He said, you're not a beginner. So I only got to observe it. And yeah, so that was my initial experience. And then so many intense experiences during that year. Hardly anybody was there. Sometimes we were the only ones in the practice hall.
Wow.
And, sometimes I would pull my mat up next to him and follow him, and he would just give me a side view and kind of laugh at me. And I uh, wasn't allowed to take class every day, staying there for so long. So I would learn in the other classes
Mm-hmm.
by, I don't want to say assist. I mean, I'm learning to assist. So I assisted Prashant's classes in the mornings, and I also got to be in the medical class, which is also a funny story because I was always, always interested in helping people. Originally I had a degree in psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked as a mental health specialist for the state of Illinois with children in a locked facility, which was actually a Kennedy era remnant where it was like progressive for its time, trying to deinstitutionalize. It was a small facility. We got kids back into the community who were destined for permanent institutionalization. And then Reagan came into power and shut it all down. And that's when I was able to go to India then for the year,
Okay.
after I collected unemployment for a year, actually. And then went, because originally I was going to go to India sooner and I wanted to stay the year. And Guruji wrote me a letter. Yes, you can come. You can stay here in the Institute. Just write the people in California about coming to that intensive. And because I wasn't from California, they said, you're not allowed to be in this intensive. And then I was bummed. And then I called Susie Vidri in the Midwest in Ann Arbor, who said, we were talking about all those Californians hogging all the intensive spots. So we're going to make our Midwest intensive. And yes, you're in. And so that's why it took a year later for me to go. But getting back to that medical class where I always was interested in helping people. And in Ann Arbor, Michigan, they were definitely doing like medical like classes, and that was also being done there, and I was learning from them. But I was told, since it was my first time, I wouldn't be able to really be in the class. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was because nobody showed up early enough in class, and I would sit on the stairs there watching intently, wanting to be invited in. And there was a man who used to be in the Air Force and had an airplane crash, an Indian man, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. And Guruji needed more hands-on to help him hold him up at the trestle. And so there I was available, and he starts calling me over. And then I decide, no, I don't want to help in the medical class. And so I kind of pretended I didn't hear him, and I'm looking around, and there's nobody else to look at, but I'm pretending to look at other things. he sends Prashant over and he says, he's calling you. And I'm, what? Who's he calling? And I fix my tights. That back then I wore tights, pretending not to hear Prashant even. And finally I was down in that medical class, had to march across the room. And I remember I held the man's shin bone in Virabhadrasana 2. I had to hold it back,
Oh,
like as a resistance
uh-huh.
with other people helping him. And then Guruji really fired on one of the assistants, like having done something wrong. And I got the message that I better listen or I'm going to get fired on. And then he looks at me and says, you go work with those people at the wall. I was not told with what was wrong with those people. I didn't know till like 10 years later they all had back pain, but they didn't tell me anything
Mhm.
about them. They worked standing poses at the wall and I had to teach them. I only learned later, years later, that Shaw, the late Shaw, who was one of the first teachers there, people my generation will definitely know who he was.
Mhm.
They wanted to free him up to help more with other cases. And so
Mhm.
I got to teach all those people at the wall standing poses. And then Guruji was breathing down my back. Use less words. They don't understand your English anyways. Make sure they follow through. Don't just move on without making sure they get the point. He kept basically teaching me how to teach these people for the whole year. And it was intimidating because other people who were observing Guruji were then observing him teaching me how to teach. I did that for the whole year. It was only like half the medical class, which meant 2 days a week. And then I would go around like following him and helping. And I learned so much. And at the very end of the year, there were other many, many, many moments, of the whole year, but I'll just share. At the end of the year, there was another woman who came from the UK, Johanna O'Connor, who had been there before many times for long periods of time. And she told me, because it was near the end of my stay there, and she said, he likes you, you know. I'm like, what? Because I didn't get that sense at all. And she said, yes, he only helped two people today in the medical class, you and Geetaji.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah. And then I went home and did everything, had people in the back of the room that I would teach, started the medical class, didn't call it a medical class. But I just continued everything I had learned. I had already had classes, so I picked up, somebody subbed for me while I was gone, and I
Okay.
picked up. And then, I would go back. That was 1983. Between 83 and 93, I was getting a PhD. I went back to grad school, and twice I went to Pune for 4 months between research projects. That's why it took me 9 years to get my PhD,
Mm.
among other things. And then when I went after I finished grad school, I went for 2 years as a broken person and had to stay 2 years. There were some trips in that 2 year period coming back. I came back for the 93 convention in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And
Mhm.
then I had a couple of trips back and forth, but I was there another 2 years. And then in after that period, there were other long trips, but then I finally opened my own dedicated studio. I wasn't teaching in another place where I rented space. I opened a dedicated school and I quit my full-time work and went full-time yoga. And then I couldn't like spend long periods of time anymore in Pune because I had to sustain myself. So I only made like 4 month trips and then it dwindled to 2 month trips. And now after the pandemic, it's down to 1 month trips, but twice a year. And that's fine. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I still, enjoy going there and love going there and still learn so much. And
Mhm.
B is just wonderful, as we all know.
How about in terms of like you've had a lot of time with Guruji and the Prashantji, Geetaji as well, Sunita, I'm sure the whole family. But let's just start with Guruji. Like, what were some of your most, and I know that you've got tons of them, but like significant lessons learned, either in the class or, in an outing or at an event with him?
Well, Wow. That's a really great question. And it's a huge question because anybody who has practiced with him and been around him a lot, uh, you know, it's so rich.
Yeah.
There are so many experiences that when I'm on my mat practicing, of course his voice is there
Yeah.
all the time. Every touch is also there.
Yeah.
For example, the first year I was there, the first time I had my period, it was Prashant's class at 7 a.m. And unknowingly, unbeknownst to me, I was doing the menstrual practice, un not by any purpose, but the ceiling rope was down, and I happened to be under the ceiling rope doing the practice for menses, and I was in Janu Shirshasan, and it felt like the ceiling came down on me.
Mm.
It was B.K.S. Angar who held the rope and jumped on my back. And
Oh.
every single forward bend, Trianga Mukha Kapata Paschimottanasana, Ardha Baddha Padma, Marichyasana 1, Paschimottanasana, Parshva Upavista, and he jumped on my back, on my dorsal back. And then it was over. I sit up and I look to the stairs. There was a group of people watching and they were like this. They couldn't believe it. I loved it. So as an example, I feel his footprints in my back every time I'm doing those forward bends. And that's just one example. And then other things he said to me, like, oh gosh, it was probably 20 years into my study with him when I was taking leave. I would never tell him when was leaving. I would just say, when I'm leaving Guruji today. And one time he said, "Oh, your practice is getting better now." I flew home without that airplane. But then when I came back the next year, he admonishes me. I think I let it go to my head. He admonished me, "What happened to you?" And your practice is all wrong. It's down and da 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 da. There are so many things. When I was at the 1990 convention and he would go room to room watching us teach, I was in Virabhadrasana 2. He walks in and he's at my right fingertips while I'm teaching Virabhadrasana 2 to a room full of teachers. And I'm talking about circularizing the heels. And my hand is right there, right there. He's, an inch from me. And he says, "Are you doing it?" And I'm like, "Now I am."
Yeah.
Just wonderful things. And then outside of the practice hall, in the library, where when we would pretend we'd be doing research, really we're just waiting for his his presence upon us to speak on whatever. Those library times were magical, and sometimes he would even teach yoga in the library. I remember, being fully clothed and standing on my head and on the library floor without a blanket as he would show something. Um, and just casual conversations. Um, One time I was walking to the Institute early morning and I was planning in my head my practice. And I remember I was thinking of what I was going to do with my forward bends that day. And then I get to the Institute and I'm sitting outside at a respectful distance from Guruji to let him have his peace and quiet. And he says, "Lois, come here." And I go over, then I kneel lower than him.
Mhm.
And he says, "When you do your forward bends today," because he would read minds, I swear, so much he read minds. And, he told me what to do. And then I remember when he was talking, just looking at his beautiful eyes. They had a hazel kind of tint to them, and his eyelashes and the glow and the color of his skin. I just remember it so vividly as he had read my mind and was telling me what to do. And then going in the practice hall, and you know, he didn't, I had put these 6 lead bars on my across my legs in Paschimottanasana, and he added to that, had my buttocks and heels up and put lead bars, and then he got people to bring plate weights, and told me my shins work, but my thighs don't work. And just, I don't know, I could go on and on and on and on. I mean, again, I just come back to that same word of everything was so rich
Yeah.
with him and alive and full of life, how he could make every cell in your body vibrate as he was trying to get you to think,
Yeah.
you know.
Hmm.
He would often, after he'd teach, he'd say, "Why don't you think like that?" Nobody thought like him.
Right. No, nobody. Going back to like when your first encounter and experience there, do you think, because I've heard, people from your era, I've heard similar experiences. Was there a little bit of a test of like, is this going to be, did it feel like it? Or maybe now looking back, do you feel like it might have been a little bit of a test of, is this going to be a student that can, I don't know.
Well, I'm sure he absolutely had something going on with me during that first 3 weeks. When I was crying, nonstop for 3 days, I finally got over it. I had terrible dreams and stuff, and then it cleared. And I just thought, he was upset because some people didn't come to his last intensive that he was expecting to come. And here I was, some raw beginner from
Uh,
who knows where. And I thought he was taking it out on me.
mhm,
And so I just was like, okay, it's his problem, not mine. And I just got stronger from that, whether it was true or not.
mhm.
But he does, he won't work with you or anyone if you have too much of an ego. And it's not that, it's like not about big ego, like how we think of it in our Western mind, but it's
Yeah.
about our chattering mind,
Mhm, mhm.
and if he's like if he was jumping on my back and I started saying, "Oh, but Guruji, I'm not ready for this, blah, blah, blah. I just can't bend forward." He would have walked away and never given me the time of day after that. And I saw this with other people. I brought a student with muscular dystrophy. He's passed now. Actually, he had Charcot-Marie tooth disease. And he met him when Guruji was in Chicago. He got him out of his leg braces and had him standing without moving, which was unbelievable.
Mm,
And so I brought him to India and I told him, look, when Guruji asks you, is this okay or not? You have to just say yes or no. Don't
mhm,
say anything more. He only wants to know because he's experimenting. And he
mhm.
needs to know just that answer. Is this okay? Yes or no? He doesn't need to know your life story from when you were 5 years old onwards. And, just be quiet and answer the questions. And it was funny because he really behaved. And one time, Guruji and I were both working with him at the trestle, bent over. Our heads were very close. And he said to him, "Is this okay?" And he screams out, "Yes," very loud. The whole hall could hear it. And Guruji and I stand up, we bumped our heads, and we just cracked up over that. He wasn't going to work with somebody who, would be crying or, have too much chatter going on because then they can't receive
Right.
teaching.
That's true.
And so I forgot the question now you asked, but that's my answer to whatever it was. Oh, yeah. Did he put me through a test? Yes, of course he did. Calling me a beginner, wanting to kick me out from the beginning. And then during that whole year, it was rough, but there was another time where a woman came into the practice hall and she would just start Hanumanasana.
Mhm.
And he would get so annoyed, thinking she's going to injure herself. This isn't right. He said, "You need to go to her and tell her how to really practice." And I was
Mm.
like so honored.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. But those compliments were few and far between, because um, that's not, he wants you to learn, and compliments in his upbringing was not. really the way that that culture tended to learn. So,
And
uh,
they're not particularly helpful in learning yoga. I mean, you want to give the students the idea that they're on the right track if they are, but I don't know. In
yeah,
my
but in Iyengar yoga, as you know, as a teacher yourself, when you say good, especially if it's the first side of something, sometimes I say good. And then the second side they do bad because they let it get to their heads. And I said, oh, I should have saved that. Well done for after both sides were done because they kind of get complacent. And, instead it's like, it's almost like you're saying good because you don't know what else to say. Especially for a beginner teacher, they'll say good, good, good a lot because they don't know what else to say.
Mhm.
They're not skillful enough yet to know, wow, they're doing everything I want them to do. Now let's go deeper, And so sometimes you mistakenly say good when it's because you, as a teacher, don't know what the next step is. That's
Mhm.
what I've learned.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's good to say well done. I do say well done a lot.
Mhm.
But then I'm sorry sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when I said it on the first side. But I need to improve my teaching with that, saying now X, Y, Z,
Yeah.
so they can go deeper, further into a more profound state of consciousness.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, yeah, the compliments are few. That's why it took 20 years for Guruji to say, "Oh, your practice is getting better now," and look what happened.
Yeah.
I came back completely wrecked. I let it go to my head.
How about your experiences with Geetaji?
That's a very interesting
Mhm.
question because in those first 3 weeks and beyond, I was more afraid of her than
Mm.
Guruji.
Mhm.
I was really afraid of her until 10 years later. It
Mm.
took me 10 years to feel comfortable around her.
Mhm.
And some of that, there was a difficult dynamic between being a student of all three Iyengars.
Mhm.
They wanted you to be really like devoted to one of them, actually. It was difficult to navigate that.
Mhm.
But I learned like when I was there for 2 years in 93, and I even said this to Geetaji at one point while I was there. Guruji was when one of them would go down between Guruji and Geetaji in terms of whatever they're going through. I don't know, but they're just less accessible, they're more quiet. So to me, it's like they're going down in the sense they're going inwards for whatever reason. Gita would rise up, and
Mm.
then it would reverse a lot of times.
I see.
And so when Gita rose up, she was up when I was there in 93. And there were still back then there were few people in the practice staying long periods of time. It wasn't that crowded yet. And so we would practice with Gita
Mm.
then, and so I got to know her better and became closer to her and assisting in the women's class. I became closer to her and got less afraid of her. But it was really hard to navigate your relationship between the two of them.
Mhm.
And and uh I remember I to get even, like I was there for 2 years because I had been wrecked from working 17-hour days between like three jobs, being in grad school. I would get up at 4 a.m. to get my 3 hour practice in. And then I'd have to teach a yoga class at 8 a.m., 4 days a week, very far on the outermost outskirts of campus in the dead of winter on my bike, loaded up with props. And then I was testing babies. That was my research out in the cornfields. I had to get 97 babies to test for my research, and then doing my academic advisor's research, taking class, teaching yoga every night and weekend. I did that for 10 years, working in a basement in my grad school time without windows. It was too much. I didn't know I had a family history of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. It came to the surface. You know,
Mhm.
when you're so stressed, whatever is your weak link
Yep.
comes up. And Guruji saw it 2 years before it got diagnosed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I came to Pune completely broken. I had a lot of job offers with my PhD. I put them all on hold. Some of them were going to wait for me because I'm like, I'm going to India at least for a year. I stayed 2 and never went back to academics after that. Well, I did it for a year, but then I went fully yoga. And anyway, I was broken. And in that time, Geeta took me under her wing and
Mhm.
really helped me. And she kept me at the trestle for like 6 months. And because I had polycystic ovarian syndrome and a lot of fibroids that felt like a dagger going into my abdomen, front to back, and being pulled to the side 24 hours a day. And within a short period of time, I was better. But she kept me at the trestle, like I said, for standing poses and really taught me how to respect my body as a woman and how to heal myself. Not ever to say, it doesn't mean you're going to get over fibroids, but I learned to live with them pain free until I
Mhm.
couldn't. And I actually had a surgery because they were pressing too much on my rectum, actually, and it was too painful. But I just had a laparoscopic procedure, had them removed, had it done twice. Anyways, that's a whole nother route. But that's how I learned so much about women's health, how to
Uh-huh.
live
Yeah.
with your issues fully. And so by 97, the women's intensive came, and that was my proposal. I said, Geeta, because I wanted to share with the world what Geeta had taught me in those 2 years about women's health.
Mhm.
And people didn't know things like cross bolsters. Nobody knew it was its own pose and how great it was for the organic body. Um, People might have known cross bolsters for Setu Bandha, but it's actually a pose where it's a
Yeah.
combination of Setu Bandha Sarvangasana, Viprita Dandasana, and depending on the apex of the positioning of that pose on the bolster, what you're targeting to lift and open and spread and create circulation. Nobody knew this.
Mhm.
And I would ask some very senior teacher to me, do you know this pose? And they'd be like, no. So
Mhm.
I wanted to share with the world, and I said, let's have this women's intensive course. And she said yes. And then it happened. And during that course, Geeta wrote this whole table to put together a program for the annual day celebration where we had sort of like a show about men arc to menopause and having us, and she had us all wear pink shorts, pink bloomers. Patricia did not want to wear those bloomers, too bad. And we went out, and I remember the audience starting to laugh because I had put my feather pillow I had brought in somebody's abdomen to simulate pregnancy. And we
Mm.
did the show, but it got truncated because the person gave an annual day report that went on for an hour and a half, naming every book acquired in the library, and it was awful.
Oh.
And it cut into the program, and we had to cut it short, and we never got to cross bolsters. And so it was like, oh, the world is still not going to know about cross bolsters. And so after that women's intensive course, I'm like, Geeta, you've got to write another book. You
Mm.
have to write another book, please, please. And she said, no, you write it. It went back and forth, back and forth. She won. I came up with a draft, and I had many sequences for menses where in those days, there wasn't the digital photos yet. I had to paste the photos, the printed photos on paper, and then on the text that would be there. And she said, no, just make one sequence for menses. And so after that, I wrote the whole book over a long period of time and then came with the book, handed her the draft, and she came back, handed the book back to me, and I'm looking at it page by page, and there's hardly any changes. And I went to her and I said, Geetaji, are you sure about this? And she just went, and which means yes. And I
Yeah.
said, you mean
For the
all those
listeners,
years?
it was a head bob.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, mean all those years I've studied with you, I learned something.
Hmm.
And so I was really pleased that didn't have many corrections. I knew not to give the book to Guruji. He's such a perfectionist that the editors have to come into the library and pull the book out from under him to publish it already, because he would just correct and correct and correct and correct. It would never get done. So if I had handed him my book before publication, it would never get done. So I just sent him a final draft asking for, something, if he could write something, which he wrote a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then when I got to Pune after it was published, he said, come here. And he's got the book on his table and he's drinking coffee. He wants me to sit next to him. He's sipping his coffee. He opens the book and oh, I have the picture up there, but there's a picture of him that when I took it, he said, hey, you got a good one. And
Mm.
because it was like candid and then it was in the book. And he's staring at that picture for a while, something that he liked about that picture before he started turning the page. And then page by page, photo by photo, I remember there was Art Chandras and he said, see the lines on your cloth, meaning your t-shirt? That's telling me that the right side of your spine is going back instead of coming forward.
Mm.
I would have never finished that book.
Yeah.
He was going page by page. We never finished because, you know, I don't know how much time passed, but we never finished going through page by page, but it never would have been done.
Yeah.
So that book really, I would say, was probably 15 years in the making. Definitely, I got very close with Geetaji. And in terms of Prashant, when I first came and I couldn't take classes every day, I ended up assisting him in the class every day. And he wouldn't let me sit.
Mm.
Like he would have me adjusting people, putting like double buckle belts at the trestle and pulling and yanking them around, adjusting everybody to the sides. And I learned so much. And then I'd maybe sit down if I didn't have anybody. He didn't have my name right. He'd say, Louis, Louis, come here quickly. He never let me sit.
Hmm.
Never let me sit. One time, and Guruji used to practice during his class time. And sometimes I'd adjust Guruji. He'd ask me to adjust him. Oh, was that intimidating? And then one time he says, I keep telling Prashant that Louis is a man's name, that that's not your name. And then I said, but Guruji, Lucy's not my name either.
Oh.
Because he would call me Lucy because I studied Hindi. And when you
Mhm.
study Hindi, you study Devanagari script
Mhm.
also, which is the base for Sanskrit and other Northern Indian languages. And I realized O and I, it's not possible for them to pronounce that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like Geeta always said, Lois, like it was hard. And then I said to Guruji, it's Lois. He says, what it is? What is it? And I'd say, okay, Guruji, Lucy's fine. And to this day, Raya every now and then says, Lucy, Lucy. It's Lucy. But then actually with the 97 Women's Intensive where we did the program during annual day from menarche to menopause, and I was going to be introduced because I was then introducing the program we were about to give. And so the announcer wanted my name, and Geeta and Guruji were sitting there, and I wrote it in Devanagari script, and they looked at it. And then from then on, they got my name right.
Well, interesting.
During that same intensive course, I was also doing these women's intensive course notes. I organized people, English speakers from around the world to take, I had hired like basically a note taker every day. And then after the class, we would meet. There would be a bunch of us going over the notes that we're taking and redoing it. And then I would type it out. And I was
Mhm.
always in the house. They had the computer in the house. I was typing out the therapy intensive course notes, taking the therapy intensive. So I told Prashant, I'm really sorry I can't assist you in class anymore. And this was already like from 83 to 97, I was always assisting him. And he said, "Oh, I don't need your help anyway."
Hmm.
Even though he wouldn't let me sit for a minute going, "Lois, Lois, come here quickly. Quickly, quickly."
Oh yeah.
And so um yeah, so you know, that kind of broke my time assisting Prashant anymore, and him telling me I don't need your help anyway after all those more than a decade, almost 2 decades. It's always funny having these relationships with unique characters, practitioners, teachers of profound knowledge of
Mm.
yoga. And it was such a privilege, such a privilege. And whatever I can do to honor their teachings and share with the world, I will do till my
Mhm.
dying breath or, inability to teach
Mhm.
anymore. Um, yeah, what they have given us, just incredible. And I'm so, so enriched by it all.
Yes, we all are. The teachings are still there, of course, and Prashant is continually,
Yeah, and Sunita's classes, oh my God,
yeah.
she have your attention from the moment she walks in. She's not teaching anything earth-shaking or groundbreaking, like some amazing point. It's just very basic things, but she nabs your attention and
Mhm.
she holds it there. Every brain cell, every muscle fiber, every skin cell, every bone cell, everything, the organs, everything is at attention
Mhm.
when you're in her class.
Yeah,
And she can catch when that attention strays for a split second.
that's a skill.
Oh, incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, and it's a skill for I've only been in her class once when she was subbing for Geetaji when I was there, but
That
just
was your
to
one
have that
experience with her.
experience of always paying attention, like always being there with your practice and not thinking,
Heightened awareness,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
always being there. Yeah,
When you're on your own practicing, sometimes that can be the hardest thing to do, I find.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she nails you to your actions. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so did Geeta G. I mean, and all of them, but in different ways.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I just love, 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 love Abi, um, because she wasn't raised in Pune.
Right.
In fact, my first year there is the year she was born.
Mm-hmm.
But she was born in what was then known as Madras. Today it's Chennai.
Mm-hmm.
And her father had the most amazing sense of humor.
Hmm.
And so I think because she wasn't raised in Pune, I don't mean this in any kind of negative way, but she didn't pick up that anger samskaras
Mm.
of the Iyengars that kind of permeated through. She has such joy
Yeah.
and delight, and she can still make you work so hard and go so deep
Yeah.
with a lightness and joyfulness and love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so great that we have her.
Yeah.
So great. I just love her.
Mm-hmm.
She's amazing. She
Mm-hmm.
has a huge responsibility.
Yes, she
And
does.
yeah, I know she has a lot of help too. So she's able to manage family life and being in the position of keeping the flame of Iyengar yoga going around the world. I don't envy that position at all, but she does it with such grace
Mm-hmm.
and joyfulness. We are so, so lucky to
Mm-hmm.
have her.
Yeah.
That'll carry Iyengar yoga on for a while.
Yes. And Shranit is also teaching.
Yeah, I haven't had his classes. I have taken when I've been in Pune when he would on Sunday
Mm-hmm.
have classes on the Yoga Sutras week by week, and Prashant then would comment on what he
Yes.
would say. But I haven't had. Have you taken his classes?
I have, yeah. He's done a couple like 3 to 5 day type workshops, for lack of a better word, through Baylor. Remarkable. I mean, he's the way he's able to convey things in his own way that is
Mhm.
also so profound. And it's interesting, you know, they all of the Iyengars that we've mentioned. Prashant did a talk when I was in Baylor in January about the nature of Guruji and the nature of Geetaji and his nature and how yoga, he connected it to how yoga helps us come to our true nature. And, you know, and that to be an effective teacher, one,
That's the second sutra.
yeah, one should be teaching from their nature. So, you know, it's interesting. They all have their own way and
Well,
their,
people have said that Guruji was a bhakti yoga
mm,
and Gita was a karma yogi, and Prashantji is a jnana yogi,
mhm,
in terms of those three different margas.
yeah,
Um, and that makes sense to me.
mhm,
Gita really felt it was her duty.
yeah,
Yeah. And Prashant, he's such an intellectual.
mhm,
And Guruji, just pure love
yeah,
of yoga. He was a lover of yoga
mhm,
through and through.
yeah. And who knows? Well, you know, maybe some grandchildren, more grandchildren will pop up or
Well,
great.
and Pavrita, the sister-in-law to Abi is teaching now.
Okay.
Yeah, and she had some time with Guruji.
Hmm. Hmm.
And who knows? Who
Hmm.
knows? You can't force it on children.
No,
Um,
you really can't force it on anyone. I don't think.
no.
Oh, yeah. Um, yeah. And so I know that you must have been to all of the conventions, like when he came to Estes Park and
Every single convention.
convention, yeah.
Well, the first one was 84.
Uh-huh.
And then that was after I had spent the year in India. But it was
Hmm.
interesting because still the first generation of teachers like Angela Farmer, Victor Van Kooten, and that Italian woman, I'm forgetting her name right now, who's still alive. They're all still alive.
Gabrielle? Is it Gabrielle?
No, 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 no. Before her teacher.
Oh, okay.
Um, I have her book here. Just one second. Well, I have it here somewhere. Uh, okay. Well, I have so many books, I can't just pull it.
That's
But
okay.
yeah, because this is like my yoga library here. Um, what was her name? But anyway, that was interesting. That was 1,000 people.
Mm.
And Vera Saida from the UK, she was like in her 70s then. And here we were, young punks, and she blew us all away in a balancing class.
Mhm.
Like, you know, she was an inspiration for me.
Mhm.
It's like I want to be doing that when I'm her age, which I'm getting very close to. Um, and yeah, that was an amazing convention, 1,000 people. That was our biggest one. Well, okay, Estes Park was 800
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
Um, that was an interesting convention because that was our only convention that was open to all yoga schools.
Yes, that was
That was
interesting.
different. Yeah.
That was the first time I saw Guruji in person.
Oh,
'Cause, yeah, I didn't go to India till after that Estes Park Light on
what
Life.
year was that, Estes Park?
90, was it
Gita
90?
taught there in 97. Not necessarily Estes Park, but she did the teachers exchange.
Oh,
97, I think it was.
and that was in Estes Park.
Yeah, it was in Estes
I
Park.
so okay, so our St.
It was
Paul,
the Light on Life
yeah.
book tour, so it was after that, isn't it?
I think it was, oh, you're right. It was 2006.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, because I have all of Guruji's books right here at hand.
you're absolutely right. Yeah, I was getting
Um,
my decades mixed up. It was 2006 um that he did that. Our convention in St. Paul was 2004, and that's when I was just
that,
a baby student.
and that was when Gita at the last minute canceled.
Yeah. It wasn't really at the last minute. We're holding on to hope, but yeah, it wasn't a cancellation. She never really ever committed from
Oh,
my.
I didn't know that. Okay. And yeah, and actually at other conventions she had done, and even when Guruji first came, it wasn't just only them teaching like it is now with Abi will teach all the classes. We would have the teachers teaching in the afternoon. She would teach morning sessions. And
Mhm,
then we basically had breakout sessions
mhm,
of teachers in the afternoon sessions.
mhm. Yeah.
I liked the Minneapolis convention. Everybody liked it because they got a taste of all the teachers.
Yeah.
I remember there, bringing it back to cross bolsters, I had a 3-hour class, The Wonderful World of Cross Bolsters. I was still determined to get people to know cross bolsters.
Yeah. I might have been in that one. I know I had a class with you then.
Yeah, and I also taught on menopause. Yeah,
Yeah.
I liked that convention. It was very well done.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Oh yeah.
And
A lot of people liked it.
yeah, good. That's good. Yeah, it was a lot I mean, it was a lot to organize, and I wasn't the main organizer, but I helped, and
Yeah. Well, it takes a village. It
true.
takes a city to organize a convention.
It's true. So yeah, I remember going back to then the Light on Life tour when it was my first time seeing him, and Kristen and Lee had us all chanting Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, and then he walked in with his,
His
entourage.
entourage.
Oh my gosh, I was so moved. It was just really amazing. Just the people and the energy, and then the vision of him, to see him in person was very wonderful. And
Powerful.
yeah, it was powerful. Yeah. How about any other stories you want to share? That's
Well,
another.
I had Geetaji at my house.
Oh, well, how was that?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
It was the 2001 Odyssey convention. I was on the board then.
Hmm.
And I remember when I came on board, my mission was to have another convention because we used to have them every 3 years and it backslid. We weren't having them. And I was like, we got to have them. We got to have these conventions. And so um, we had the convention and she was going to do some stopovers on the way to Pasadena, the convention site. And she agreed to come to my city. I was so honored. Like she went to all these big cities, like, San Diego, Los Angeles. I don't know. She stopped in all the big ones and then it was Champaign Urbana. I was so honored. And I was told by the powers that be, do not have her teach, just have her lecture.
Mm.
And I asked her, I said, Geetaji, would you prefer to teach or lecture? And she said, teach.
Oh, good. Mhm.
So I actually had her do everything. Like she came and I had to drive her down from Chicago with the entourage. And then in the evening, I had a puja.
Mhm.
And, the I had a Setu Banda bench holding all the paraphernalia of the puja, and the Setu Banda bench caught fire.
Oh my goodness.
And I still have that burn on the Setu Banda bench, and I love it. And so we had the puja, and then she gave a lecture. It was open to the whole city, the hall. I have a big room. It was packed, not just with yoga people, but curious
Yeah.
neighbors, community. And then the next morning, she taught a class. I rented out the Civic Center here. It held up to 200 people and it was packed at 200. And it was a theater in the round. And she taught and she was very happy with the teaching. And so that was the morning. And then we went it was a 40-minute drive from here. I took her to this park that's owned by the university. It's a beautiful park with a mansion. It's like kind of like our Versailles here in the middle of the cornfields that was
Mhm.
built by in the early 1900s by a very wealthy man, and there's statues in the forest and stuff. Now she couldn't really walk or hike, but we could stop along the way and visit the statues. I have a photo of us at the Centaur statue, and there were spring flowers in the sunken garden. She loved it. And she made some comment as we was driving because, it's so flat here to Chicago. It's like flat, flat, flat. When people see this for the first time, they have never seen such a flat area. And made some comment like, I could see how people's personalities are shaped by the environment. God knows what she meant. I didn't want to know.
Yeah.
And then that night, she came to my therapy class because it was my regular therapy class. And when I was arranging details beforehand, before she came, I said, Geeta, and also, could you come to the therapy class? I said, I will not have you do interviews. I will not have you write sequence. You just waltz in and you could go around from person to person. You don't have to create any program. And she agreed to that. So when we get to my yoga center, I was like, oh no, I see this girl. She's 14 sitting in the foyer. I had left her sequence at my house the week before. I interviewed her, went through her program, or made her program. She had severe endometriosis that kept her housebound sometimes. It was really severe. And I said, oh, Geeta, I'm so sorry. I told you you wouldn't have to make a program, but I left her sequence at home because it's her first time. And she said, no worries. And I had to go in and say, hey, everybody, Geeta's here,
Mhm.
get, into your poses. And then immediately Stephanie and Geeta were chattering away, looking at her, and coming up with whatever. And then
Mhm.
the whole event happened and she was going from place to place. There was one man who had been my roommate in India. He was a teacher and he spent 3 months here. And it was at the end of his 3 months because his migraines overtook his life, preventing him from doing anything, from teaching, from practicing. He lost his life. Um, and he wanted to spend time here. I said, well, guess what? At the end of your time, Geeta's coming. So yes, come. And he made some improvements, a lot of improvements while he was here. But when she got to him, at the trestle, he happened to be in Parivrtta Trikonasana. That was just the pose he happened to be in. I said he has chronic migraines, debilitating migraines. She adjusted him
Mm.
and sweat burst out of the top of his head. And he never had migraines again.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
that's the power of
Yeah.
Iyengar yoga. And I don't know if they came back. I haven't heard from him since, but it was incredible to see. And I saw her work with somebody who had a terminal cancer, and it was really amazing to see her working with each and every one of my students.
Mhm.
And then I remember after that night, we went out shopping. She bought some earrings for B, and then the next day we went to Chicago. But I should also say that I have a really, really small house.
Mhm.
And I actually just added this addition. It was 700 square feet, and I added 200 square feet, and it just almost got done when she was here. But I still only had one bathroom where the sink, I had an apartment size sink that hung over the bathtub. It was so small. And everybody like was going into the bathroom, shutting the door. Geeta kept walking to the bathroom. The door was shut. I had to announce Geeta's next in the bathroom. Anyway, we would have our little, like, I don't drink coffee, but I made everybody coffee, and we'd have our little coffee clutch with her in the morning. And then we'd get to practicing together. It was really nice having her at my house. And I heard that much later, I heard that she told people, Lois has the smallest house, but the biggest yoga center. Because usually she's staying in some mansion, so she saw how people really live. And
Yeah.
so it was just nice that, we just chit-chatted while she was here. And then we went to Chicago and I took her on the Ferris wheel there. It's an architectural Ferris wheel where there's a thing that they describe the buildings you're seeing. And I have a picture of her sitting in front of the Ferris wheel. It was wonderful. And then after it was all over, the dust had settled. I find the card that I had written this young girl's yoga program, and I compared it to what Geeta and Stephanie had come up together. It was exactly the same, except
Wow.
two poses were the order was changed, but their order is fine to be different.
Uh-huh.
That testifies to Iyengar yoga being a science,
Mm-hmm.
that there's a methodology, that you see the student, you discuss the case, you figure it out, you come up with a sequence.
Mm.
And it was the exact same, just one pose, inter, I can't think of the word, interposed or whatever.
Up to you.
And that was really validating. And another thing was that Geeta had said, oh, when she was here, it felt like she was in Pune. She gave a lecture in the night, and then the next day it was like her exact Wednesday in Pune. She taught a class in the morning and did the therapy class in the afternoon. Like she really had enjoyed it here, I
Oh, that's
think. Yeah, my
awesome.
little small town where the landscape shapes people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so that's an experience I'll
good.
never forget. Let me show you a photo of her I took in my house.
Okay.
1 second.
Okay. Mm.
Oh, I don't know. There's a glare from the window, but
Yeah.
I can't change that.
No, but I can see. And if you
Look at her
could,
legs. Look at how
yeah,
long her legs are.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we practiced in the morning in my house, in my little teeny house, and she took advantage.
I
And
love that.
actually, she had come out of this pose, and then she saw I had my camera, and so
Uh-huh.
she went back into the pose for me, which was
Wow.
nice of her.
That's really special.
Yeah,
For the listeners, could you send me a picture of that? And then when I market this interview, I can post that with it.
sure.
Okay.
And in fact, well, I'll see if I can take it without that glare. But
Mhm.
I'm noticing in the picture, I don't have that on my wall right now, but when we were in Rishikesh and we went to one of the tributaries of the Ganga, there was this place where we lowered ourselves into the freezing cold water because it was February winter and there's a chain and somebody's there to make sure you're fully submersed under the water, coming up and down 3 times to wash away the sins of your mother, your father, your teacher. And somebody
Oh,
presses you down to make sure you're fully covered in this freezing water. And you can't, it's hard to see, but that's me coming up for air. And then
oh,
water is cascading off me. And I think actually Lee Severickson took that photo and gave it to me, and I had it framed. So there's like a photo in the photo there.
yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
many memories.
Hmm.
And to this day, I have, in fact, on 2 shelves here, well, one of them's covered with the elephant photo, but I have diaries that I would write in every day.
Hmm.
And I told my brother, because my brother's a writer, maybe when I die, you can write something with it, that or burn it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I want anybody to read these diaries. There's some very personal things in there, you
Mhm.
know. But I've kept them every day since I landed in the end of 1982. And have written to this day,
Yeah.
every day in Pune.
Wow.
And that's aside, that's not, I have separate notes from classes
Sure.
that I
Yeah.
would take after class. This is separate. This is just my personal
Mm-hmm.
feelings, experiences.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Do you ever go back and page through them?
I haven't really looked at them. I had to look through them for something. I was trying to find out some information. It's kind of really difficult,
Yeah.
actually. I don't know if have you kept a diary yourself?
Um, yes, not as thorough as that, but and I would write when I was in Pune in the same way, and like when I've done other traveling abroad, and I think it's really helpful for processing, you know. But then I rarely go back and read it.
Oh yeah, it's too much.
Yeah, yeah. But it's good to process your thoughts.
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
But if somebody wants to take those diaries and do something with it, they're welcome to it.
Yeah,
There's some very personal things in there.
yeah. Well, good to know. I get a lot of ideas from this podcast, and when I interviewed, I still think about this when I interviewed Savita and um, Vanita. Yeah, they talked about the cookbook. The or no, I the idea was to come up with a cookbook. They were talking about the recipes from their family, and I was like, "Gosh, we should get a cookbook together, the Iyengar Yoga cookbook." And so that's just still an idea in there right now. But you know what? This podcast was still an idea, was an idea for a while, and now here it is. So who knows what's going to happen? Anyway, well,
Cool, you interviewed Vanita because she was depicted in Inner Beauty, Inner Light. Did you
Mhm.
know that book when she was pregnant with
Yes.
Kaushik? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That was by Frederick Laboyer, who only recently passed away.
Oh, okay.
Frederick Laboyer was a physician and he became an OBGYN and he wanted birth to be more natural. He started the natural birth movement.
Okay.
And he also did another book about Indian massage. I forgot the name of it, but he did that book as well.
So you said the book that she was pregnant in was Inner Beauty, Inner Light?
Inner Beauty, Inner Light.
Now, who was pregnant? Because I got it mixed up then. Who was pregnant in A Gem for Women?
Oh, I'd have to look. It was probably Vanita. It was probably the same person.
Okay.
This book was, do you know Inner Beauty, Inner Light? I have it somewhere. It was, like an art book,
Uh-huh.
and it's
Okay.
black and white. And at the end, there's a picture of Kaushik with curly hair.
Uh,
Yeah. And he's probably like 40 something now, like 45 or so, maybe even close to 50 now. Because she's 42,
mm-hmm.
and Kaushik is the firstborn of the grandchildren.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he must be close to 50. And it was Kaushik when I actually lived at the Institute.
Mm-hmm.
People used to live there. And I was the only one in the Institute after the intensive was over. And it was very quiet. And he would always be coming over and knocking on my door. And Savita would come and grabbing away. I said, no, no, it's okay. He's not bothering me. So yeah, we know each other from way back. And Srini was just a little pipsqueak. And I remember he would come up into the practice hall when Prashant would be in the rope in Viprata Dandasan with his heels on the trestle and hanging off the rope. He would hold on to his legs and pop his head up through the legs hanging there.
Oh my gosh, that is so
Yeah.
cute. I wish I just have a vision of that. That's
Yeah. And he would
yeah.
often come up, and when Prashant would be in head balance in the middle of the room, he would just come up, plop himself in front, and I'd see him shaking his head and talking to him while his
Oh,
was in head balance.
yeah, they clearly have a close bond.
Oh, yeah.
Mm, that's great. Okay, so I want to ask you for a final question now. I ask this to everyone. How do you see us as teachers and upcoming teachers, especially holding on to the legacy of B.K.S. Iyengar? How do we?
Oh, that's an easy question to answer because I've told this story many times. I'm not going to go into depth.
Okay.
Sometimes when I've told it, people are crying at the end. But Patricia Walden and I went to Pune just for a week to ask him what we're going to do when.
Mm.
Do you know that story? Have you heard it?
It's sounding familiar, but
Sounding familiar. To make it short, he was telling us his life story that we've heard so much, and we were only at 1938. It was
yeah.
an hour and a half already, and we didn't get an answer yet. And
Uh-huh.
so finally, I just banged the table down and said, Guruji, what are we going to do when you die? I just had to say it like that. And he stopped and he kind of took a breath. And then he said, when you practice, oh no, he started with, Iyengar yoga will be no more at some point. It will die out. That's inevitable.
Mm.
But when you're on your mat, practice with integrity.
Mhm.
And when you teach, observe your students. And then he proceeded to teach Patricia handstand because the whole week he noticed she wasn't doing handstand because she had some forearm problem, like a muscle had ruptured. And, and then she's like, oh, but my arm, my arm, my arm. I'm like, you got to just do it, Patricia. So she went up and he did something with her and she comes down and her arm was healed. And then the three of us were standing really close, really close. And it was so moving because we were saying goodbye. And he said, I love you.
Oh.
That's not something that Indians say so easily. Not even something that Westerners say so easily.
Mhm.
But he said, I love you. Oh my God, when he walked away, Patricia and I were holding each other and just crying.
Mm.
And I realized I was going to transcribe that interview, but I didn't.
Mhm.
Because to me, that message, the main message was his life story and everything that went against him to share yoga with the world, especially when it came to the point in Pune where he taught at Ferguson College. People were against him and they burned his yoga room. They set fire to it and he lost everything and he had no money. And yet he persevered. Now, I don't know if somebody came and burned my yoga center to the ground if I could persevere like he did, you know, and, I have insurance and stuff. He had nothing,
Yeah.
but he still persevered. So the message is in the story that get on your mat no matter what. You get on your mat and you practice with integrity.
Mhm.
And that's the message for everyone, for the generations to come. And to observe your students is meaning, yes, in the beginning, you're more like an instructor, rotely giving like techniques and what you have to do. But then when you become a teacher, that
Yeah.
comes from within by seeing,
Yeah.
really looking at your students
Mhm.
and from your own practice of integrity,
Yeah.
giving, imparting to them what they need at that moment. That's timeless.
Mhm. Mhm. That's good. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of On the Light. After hearing Lois share her stories about Geetaji, I felt moved to return to my copy of A Gem for Women, written by Geetaji and published in 1990. As I read the opening chapter, I was reminded of the adversities she faced in her early life and how profoundly she contributed to the world despite it. Geetaji herself was truly a gem. We are incredibly fortunate to have received her teachings, her strength, and her unwavering dedication to yoga. I encourage you to go back and reread that first chapter for yourselves. If you enjoy On the Light, please consider liking, sharing, or subscribing. And if you're able, a small monthly donation helps support the continued production of this podcast. Thank you for listening. Namaskar.